On this episode of Sidebar Forever, we celebrate the 20th anniversary of The Matrix. This 1999 cyber thriller starring Keanu Reeves, Laurence Fishburne, Carrie-Anne and Hugo Weaving literally changed the game with its special effects, its martial arts wireworks, its themes, and its casting choices. Come be with us as we go all the way down the rabbit hole with Neo, Morpheus, Trinity, and the rest of the gang.
Silverman? How's the knee?
Did you just have a brain fart?
I know Taekwondo.
Stop eating my sesame cake!
You're killing me, Smalls.
Fuck with me, and we'll see who shits on the sidewalk.
Come quietly, or there will be trouble.
Clearly, I wasn't talking to you, big titties. You cherub-looking motherfucker.
While you were still learning how to spell your name, I was being trained to conquer galaxies.
The real question is, what are those?
At last. Welcome, Neo. As you no doubt have guessed, I am Morpheus.
It's an honor to meet you.
No. The honor is mine. Please, come, sit. Unfortunately, no one can be told what the Matrix is. You have to see it for yourself. This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. Remember, all I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
So today's topic is The Matrix 20 years later. It's been 2 decades since this groundbreaking cyber thriller hit the theaters and really changed the game for cinema and for special effects.
Oh, certainly.
And in other ways too, which I think we're all probably aware of and are going to get into in the heart of our discussion. But for anyone who hasn't seen the movie, it was written and directed by the Wachowskis. It stars Keanu Reeves, Laurence Fishburne, Carrie-Anne, Hugo Weaving, and a bunch of others. It's an ensemble cast, but those are really the principals. Originally, my understanding is the Wachowskis, in typical Hollywood fashion, they reached out to Leonardo DiCaprio and Will Smith to play Neo, and Leo turned it down because he had just done Titanic, and he said he didn't want to do another movie with a bunch of special effects. He was just kind of worn out on that.
Okay.
And they reached out to Will Smith, and Will Smith couldn't really get the concept. He said, the way they were describing it, it just didn't sell to him. He couldn't quite get it. And at the time, they were also talking about Val Kilmer to play Morpheus. So,
wow.
So,
wow.
Neo would have been a black guy, and Morpheus would have been a white guy. And Will Smith, to his credit, says, it wouldn't have been as good a movie. I think Val Kilmer was trying to talk the Wachowskis into making it more of Morpheus' story The Neo story, of course.
No ego there.
No, not at all. Not at all. But Keanu Reeves plays Thomas Anderson, a.k.a. Neo. Laurence Fishburne is Morpheus. Carrie-Anne Moss is Trinity. Hugo Weaving plays Agent Smith. Anyway, we all rewatched the movie to refresh ourselves. Adrian, you said you've seen it so many times, you really didn't need to, but you did go ahead and indulge, right?
Yeah, exactly. I did, just in case I had to sop up something. But yeah, like I was sitting there quoting the dialogue as it was coming. But but it was funny. It's because even on this, like, infinite rewatch, I've seen it so many times. It's still, you can still sense how fresh it was and is. You know what I'm saying? Even though it's been oft imitated in the decades after, there's still something, there's a vital spark there that you can still see in the movie and feel in that movie, even to this very day, rewatching it even after so many times.
Yeah. I agree 100%. And, the thing about it to me, like rewatching this movie, it still strikes me the same way it did 20 years ago, where this is, of all the high concept films, this is probably the ultimate high concept film. So much so that the first time I had to see it twice to get it.
Okay.
I had to see it twice to get it. My sister to this day still doesn't understand it. Like she doesn't, I mean, you can sit down and try it. I'm drawing maps and freaking, Venn diagrams and flow charts and shit. And she just doesn't get it. But I think
there is no spoons. That's the thing.
That's it. You think that's air you breathing?
Right.
But one of a couple of things we don't have to talk about what is the roto special effects thing? What's that called?
It's John Gator made it.
John Gator, the Gator Force, isn't it? Bullet time, or there's a technical term.
Bullet time is a term they use most often nowadays. But it was the Gator effect, is what it was called back in the day.
Okay.
Yeah.
John Gator. Yeah.
Okay, that's a dope. He has a dope last name, and that's a dope name to call some shit.
It really is.
The Gator effect.
He coined it.
Yeah.
The Hunt effect and the Johnson effect would be like,
no, not the same
Definitely the Clark effect. That's
right. But I think the things that stand out for me, and this is where I really wanted us to start with, is perhaps one of the best opening sequences in the last 2 decades, maybe not even having been beaten in any way. I mean, it's just, it was so jarring and so off kilter and so like shocking. It was incredible to see, because you didn't know. You're like, okay, it's like this police thing, and then the agents pull up, and then you see Trinity in there, and she's being apprehended by the cops, and then you see this fight and the effect, and then they chase her across the rooftops, and then she jumps, and she jumps through that window, and then just pile drives down the stairs, and then lands, guns blazing, both drawn, like the two gun kid. Just, I mean, it was absolutely mesmerizing to see, and I thought it was so. One of the things that made it so key is that it opens with this really badass female character, which you could very easily have inserted a male character in there, and people would have bought into it a lot, like from the beginning. But the fact that I mean that Carrie-Anne Moss was the first person you see to display this kind of dynamism in the film, that to me, what do you guys think of the opening sequence? Just those first 10 minutes.
Man, hey, you want to go first?
No, you go ahead, Sam.
Okay. Well, first one, I have to rewind just a little bit about Swain saying as far as that goes. There's a sequence of numbers that occurs over and over and over again in this movie. The first of those being when the Matrix first unravels and then pans into that area, which when they open up with that sequence where
where Trinity is upstairs, the first set of numbers you see are 606. That's the Matrix, right? Then, as they go upstairs to see her, she's in room 303.
Okay, so it's half.
Yeah,
okay.
right? And then, later on down the line, it goes to room... Let me get this right. I took notes.
Okay.
Come on. Yeah, 606 is first. Then the first time you see Trinity, it's room 303. Yeah. And then later on, it goes to. We'll discuss later what happens after 303. But yeah, man, that opening sequence was incredible, man. The fact that you saw her and the cops were on her, and when the agents pull up on her next, Agent Smith says, we're supposed to be afraid of some little girl. So you don't understand, they're dead already. And then then she turns around that infamous, often imitated, like you said, Adrian or Swain, that infamous like tarantula spider stance where she's posed in the Spider-Man.
That spider monkey, yo.
Yeah, the monkey. Yeah.
And it's like, it was on from that point on, man. I was like, oh shit. It was like, she's incredible, man.
Yeah.
So yeah, that first sequence, and then she's like Swain said, she runs and she jumps across the roof to the other roof. That was a la, first time we saw that was in Blade. Blade jumps from roof to roof. He was the first person to do that. And then she lands and she goes downstairs and she's like telling her, you gotta get up, Trinity. Gotta get up. Get up. And she starts doing her thing, man. It was awesome, man. It was awesome.
And even like as high concepts go, when she, this whole preoccupation where she's got to get to an open line and then she finds the phone booth. And then Smith jumps into the body of the truck driver and then rams the phone booth. And then he sees that she's gone. And they're not, it's the first 10 minutes, but they're not, they're spoon feeding this to you a little bit at a time, a little bit at a time. Right before we started recording, Dee and I were talking, and, we were just talking about how, like, the end sequence is really the big payoff, when they go to rescue Morpheus. And it's this big set piece and just lots of things going on, but everything before that they give it to you a little bit at a time. First you're gonna crawl, then you're gonna stand up, then you're gonna walk, then you're gonna run, then you're gonna jump. They're giving it to you just enough so that you can really digest it, and then you really don't even get to the real big that kind of second act where they pull Neo out of his pod. You don't get to that until, I don't know how far into the movie or whatever. But anyway, Adrian, what were your thoughts, man, on that opening sequence?
Oh, well, we went opening night, me and my two good friends and I. And it must have been the perfect crowd for it because the way it opened, you could kind of sense in the audience, it was like, what's going on? With her sitting at the desk and her back turned to the cops when they bust in. And then the agents pull up and everything. You can kind of sense an audience kind of like, what's going on here? What? But I will tell you, when she jumps up and she goes into the spider monkey pose, every dude in the audience who knew kung fu movies, all of us were like, oh shit! And, like unanimously at the same time, you can hear us interspersed through the theater, like, oh, yeah. And so when she kicked him and took out the cops, of course, clapping applause, you know what I'm saying? And then when she gets chased across the rooftops, and when she goes to jump, when she sees that window, that small opening where she has to go, and she makes that jump and turns on a spit.
Yep. Right.
Dives through the window, rolls down the stairs. That was the second round of applause, uproarious applause. It was like, oh man, woo, oh shit. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, from then on, everybody was all in. And it was just like, you were so off kilter. It made it so off kilter that you were almost ready for anything. Like, you're just like, I don't even know how this is going to begin. So if you got past that first 10 minutes or so, you were just like, okay, I'm open for wherever you guys are taking me. Wherever we're going, I'm cool with it, you know? And it was a hell of a ride from there.
It really was.
Definitely. And that's kind of one of the keys to filmmaking and storytelling in film, as I've always understood it to be, and I'm sure you guys would agree. But you know, the first 10, 15 minutes of the movie, you're kind of really the first 5 to 10 minutes of the movie, you're setting the tone and you're letting the audience know what kind of world this is and what kind of story you're telling. And so that's why when people talk about the movie not knowing what tone it's in, it's like, okay, well, you sold me on this as one thing in the beginning, and then you changed it later, and those two tones don't seem to be, they don't seem to be working in concert with one another. So I don't know. But yeah, and D is absolutely right. The Blade is actually the first place that we saw somebody make that leap, you know, that special effects leap from one rooftop to the next. So so hats off to Wesley Snipes and the people who made Blade. But the story itself, I mean, the cast is made up, and this is another thing I thought was really interesting, and something that people, I don't remember a lot of people talking about. I'm sure it was talked about, but the cast is largely made up of people of color, which was,
thank you.
Which I thought was a real first, because typically in genre movies, especially like this, a cyber thriller with lots of special effects, you don't see a lot of the principal characters being people of color, Black, Spanish, Asian, what have you. And yet that was definitely the case with this. And Neo is clearly like a Jesus character. It's a classic hero's journey.
Oh, absolutely. Without a doubt.
Or maybe he's Luke Skywalker, and Morpheus is, you know, is a combination of Yoda and Ben Kenobi.
Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But in watching the movie, like, let's go ahead and get the special effects thing out of the way here. Do you guys feel like the special effects are still solid? I think that definitely, you know, the wire food kind of looks of its time, for sure. But I do think the special effects overall work well. I thought they were used tastefully. The places where they really went out there, like the Gator effect and some of the wire food, those are the places where it doesn't quite hold up as well. But I think the martial arts and the gunplay, I think it's beautifully shot too, you know, as well. I think a lot of that holds up. But what do you guys think in terms of those things, and how they stand the test of time?
Adrian, what do you think, man?
Well, I was gonna say it was refreshing to see a movie with a lot of practical effects, like a big budget effects movie. They actually had a lot of practical effects. Like, you can see where there was some rear projection stuff. But it's funny, like, right at the turn of the millennium right there, I don't know what it was, but even though you can tell it's rear screen in some scenes, like, particularly when they're, when Neo is rescuing Morpheus and they're hanging from below the Huey helicopter. You know what I'm saying? There are several shots that are obviously rear screen, but they don't look it. You know what I'm saying? Like, usually when you do rear screen, there's like this weird halo that's around the principals, and you don't get any of that. Like, and whatever source material they use for those shots is so crisp that it integrates itself so beautifully into it. You know what I mean? And the back and forth shots of rear screen, then you do a master shot of the actual helicopter with the two stuntmen flying over above Sydney to really put it grounded. You know what I'm saying? And the other practical effects too, like especially a lot of the science fiction stuff, you know, inside of the Nebuchadnezzar, that ship, very well designed, very well designed.
Pretty.
You know what I'm saying? Like, even the little gadgets and stuff. Like, there's a little claw that brings Neo up when they discover him from the
love
plant.
that, man.
When they rescue him from the plant. Yeah. And you and the Wachowskis take special care to show, okay, we're pulling him up. Here's the pulley pulling him into the ship. And the way they pan across everything and really give you the geography of this set. And it's a beautifully designed set so that you're never lost in there and everyone looks and has their own place. You know what I'm saying? So as far as like the special effects and just real actual sets, not a damn green screen, is very much appreciated.
Seriously.
You know.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And I agree, man. To piggyback off of that, I agree 100%. I think some of the effects, especially the Gator effect, I mean, even though it's you know, now it got overly used by the masses when they saw how good it was. They used everything from X-Men to everything else from that point on, including the leather jumpsuits for the X-Men, because they were so a lot more easily acceptable than the common colors that you find inside of.
Let me just insert in here. That had been used, reused, chopped and screwed, remixed, mashed up, and even parodied to the point where they used the gator effect in Deuce Bigalow, Male Gigolo. Yes.
Really? What part?
He's having a fight with this female prostitute over who's going to pay who, because they're both prostitutes. And they start throwing things at each other, and then they start doing them falling backwards.
That's right. Yes.
Wow.
So
that cheap
exactly. It was like a Big Lots version of the gator effect, yo.
And see, man, when I saw it on a television commercial for it was either toilet tissue or something, but it was a television commercial. It was like, okay, this is they've gone the bridge too far.
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely permeated the conscious and the zeitgeist, as Adrian would say,
Yeah.
But I think like as far as the rear screen projection goes, there's very few times you can tell. And one of the times I could tell was when they cut the elevator wire, and the elevator going opposite direction, and it pulled down behind them. That was obviously a green screen behind them. But other than that, I mean, the thing is about the whole idea behind suspending your disbelief with the Matrix is that it's about disbelief. Philosophically, it all works well together. So it's like for you to be able to say, okay, I can see this, I can see that. It's like, well, yeah, this is the Matrix. This is the part where the irritant has made it possible to see these things inside the Matrix. So that's how I was able to rationalize it. So for me, the small things like that, it works because philosophically, this is what it is. You see what I'm saying?
And I think it was
it's a weird rationale, but
no. But I understand your point where, you're sold a certain thing at the very beginning, and so it's like, okay, you're not. In other words, you're not selling me believe that a man can fly, believe that people are on speeders and on Tatooine and there's 2 moons. You're not trying to make me believe these things. You're telling me that what you believe was an illusion. To quote Morpheus. And so I would kind of go with that, D, for
man,
sure.
It went so deep. Man, it went so deep. As a side note, it went so deep into what the Matrix was until in my class in college for existential philosophy, we got extra credit for seeing the movie and then discussing it with the instructor ad nauseum. So. Yeah, man, it was. That's how much it permeated the subconscious and people's idea of what reality was. Did a really good job of that. Really good job of that.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the movie, at least in the beginning of the movie, you started questioning certain things. It's like, damn, Agent Smith is kind of right. We're more like a virus than we are, mammals and humans. We actually do. We don't as human beings, we don't like adapt. We take over and destroy and make things the way we want it to be, like we had some right to do that. But no, so I mean, rewinding back a little bit. So the next segment we saw with Mr. Anderson was when he was waking up from sleeping and dreaming about the Matrix, and he's seeing these articles about Morpheus on his computer, and he follows one of them, and Trinity had hacked his computer, and she sees that she tells him to follow the White Rabbit, and then in doing that, they're playing an incredible song, yo. You know what that is, don't you? Swizz and Adrian.
Is it
Dissolve? Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Dissolve Girl by Massive Attack of the Mezzanine album. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I didn't catch that.
Yeah.
Okay.
She's such a she. Yeah, man. So it's like that just kind of when I heard it again for the first time after a while, I was like, wow, I didn't realize that was them. But I being a big fan of the Mezzanine album, was like, yeah, I knew exactly what that was when I heard it. But in the movie, I would not have known that. Because at the time wasn't really. I was checking for Massive Attack, but I wasn't really. I didn't hear too many of their albums until after that. But yeah, man, that took me aback. I was like, wow, this is super cool, man. How they intermingle, how the music kind of like intermingles with the overall structure of the film. And that was one of those.
And for it to be about a hacker, and for it to be a cyber thriller, and Massive Attack, to be an electronica band, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, man. So I dug that a lot.
It's interesting, to bring up that point, how the Matrix seemed to come out right at the cusp at the turn of the millennium. So you have this fear of, because it came out in March of '99. And so you already have this building fear / fascination with Y2K. What's going to happen when it turns to the year 2000? And this is also at almost the beginning of the internet as we know it. The internet had been around for a couple of decades, in a primitive sense, when it was like modem based, phones and, hackers, teenage dudes in their rooms, kind of doing it as a hobby, not real serious.
Also, post Napster and post file sharing and all of that by about, and wait a minute, maybe it had been around about maybe a year or so by then.
Yeah. So you already start having this fascination of, the internet and how deep that internet really goes. You know what I'm saying? Because the internet, if you really think about it, you can't see it in a physical sense, but it's this wide, vast array of different types of people putting material up there. So it almost has these alleys that you can go down, these rabbit holes.
Alice in Wonderland. Okay. Perfect.
Perfect to
analogy.
Find
there you go.
Exactly, to find these different types of things. And so there's still today, it seems like there's a lot of information out there, but you can still fall down a rabbit hole and find, this certain thing that you weren't expecting, but it could lead you to something, a new hobby or a new fascination for yourself to discover, and I think all of that came together and coalesced at the beginning with The Matrix. You know what I'm saying? And I think it was like the right time, right place for that movie, in so many ways. Definitely.
Yeah, man.
I think to buttress your point, Adrian, not unlike The Surrogates, the comic The Surrogates
Robert
that was made into
Venditti,
a film.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, written by our former guest, Robert Venditti. The Matrix was way ahead of the idea of like avatars and online personalities, being, like a representation of ourselves, but not really ourselves. And then in a way more true to ourselves than what we know to be in the real world. And, this idea that, Thomas Anderson had this other life that he lived. Yeah. Online, selling these, programs and, and whatever he's doing as a hacker, and then feeling disconnected in the same way that, that some of us feel disconnected now. I see there's a meme that's been floating around online, basically just talking about how, back in the day, people would jump online to escape reality. Now people jump offline to escape the harshness of reality. People get off of social media. They get off of their computers to connect with reality and to take a break and to de-stress. So it's very interesting. But and I think also too this is probably one of the greater examples of. I mean, we mentioned the hero's journey part earlier, but this is one of the great examples of a film about a normal person who meets a stranger who tells them an outrageous story, and they leave their normal, pleasant, everyday life and go on this adventure or this journey with this stranger.
Terminator.
Terminator. I mean, there's bunches of them. There's tons of them. Born Identity. There's lots of them. Yeah. But this is really one of the where it's like, okay. And I always want to, like, in watching this, when I was trying to see if they gave it truly enough time for Neo to believe, the story that Trinity was just telling him, and then ultimately that Morpheus was telling him. In other words, did they give it enough time for it to really seem like he would buy into it? Terminator, it felt, for me, a few ticks too early. But at the same time, in this movie, I think the fact that he was a hacker, that he was a tech person, that he did live online, and that he did realize that, that technology, offered, a look into another world, so to speak. He was able to accept it, and the fact that he was a loner and he was, he lived this very solitary life, and also, did you guys catch I didn't catch this at first, but it was obvious to me. He sent Trinity in to seduce Neo.
I didn't take it that way, but I guess looking back now, sure, because when she gets real close to him and intimate to kind of tell him, when she leans in, you know, at the club, you can kind of sense that romantic tension, but I thought it was more like, like some foreshadowing, like there may be a romance between them, but...
Well, what I'll say is this: I wouldn't say as much he's sent her in there to do. If anybody sent anybody anywhere, it was the fact that she had gotten that message from the Oracle that she would be the one that would bring him into the fold. You see what I'm saying? So the fact that she had the prophecy from the Oracle, that's what led her to believe that she was the one that had to go forth and do it anyway to some degree. Okay. So maybe Morpheus, to some degree, maybe he did have some kind of machination that allowed her to do that, but ultimately she's following her own destiny, so to speak, in terms of what the Oracle told her would be about.
Well, I didn't catch that, but you're probably right, D. I may be off base with this, but I just thought the idea of sending her in, it'd be like she would be the obvious choice. And Carrie-Anne Moss was really hot in this movie to me, just like gorgeous and beautiful, and those blue eyes and that brunette hair. And then she was just kicking ass all over the place, and she was just a really interesting character, because throughout the course of the movie, she's constantly talking about her allegiance to Morpheus and how Morpheus means so much to her, but at the same time you start to see her her connection with Neo, and even Cypher, Joe Pantoliano's character, he starts to get jealous. I don't remember you ever bringing me any meals. When they unplugged me.
Right. Nobody talking to you.
Because you ain't cute, Joey.
Right. And you know why? You know why, Joey? Because you ain't shit. You ain't shit, Joey. Look what you did. Oh man. An opportunity to go back into the Matrix. He shows you back into the Matrix, bro.
Yeah,
You're a traitor, dude. You're a traitor,
he was the
dude.
Judas. The Pontius Pilate.
He was. He was.
Pieces of silver.
It's true.
And shit. He trade him for a steak. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This steak tastes so good,
steak,
even though I know it's not real.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. But some of the other characters, since we mentioned Joey Pants as Cypher, Gloria Foster was the Oracle.
Yeah.
Marcus Chong was Tank. Matt Doran was Mouse. Belinda McClory was Switch.
Yes.
Anthony
was awesome.
Yeah,
dude.
she was. She really was, yo. And that cool ass blonde haircut, I fucking loved her.
And the only one in white at the time, in the Matrix movie. Yeah.
Anthony Ray Parker was Dozier. Robert Taylor was Agent Jones, and then Paul Goddard was Agent Brown, and then there were some other characters in there too.
Right.
But those are mainly the ones that you would see, over and over again. But yeah, man, I definitely was like, that put Carrie-Anne Moss she was on my radar. But
yeah.
Not even from Models Inc.
Oh wow.
Look, even when I was watching her as Hobar on Daredevil and Jessica Jones, I was still like, ooh.
Right.
Now she's a little bit older. She's a little more mature. I was like,
a little more seasoned.
Yeah. She was awesome. She was awesome. And we gotta give it up to Laurence Fishburne as Morpheus.
Oh man, of course.
Yeah, man.
Of course.
No doubt.
Yes.
If he really carried the movie, like he really was the linchpin. I mean, even though Neo is our hero. He really was the one who carried the movie because he had to explain everything. He had to be a leader to the crew. You had to believe that he could lead the crew. You had to believe that he had this kind of, before it was ever a term, this woke position. But then at the same time, he's still jaded and disillusioned and beat down by the situation that they're in.
He was a Yoda, dude. He was a Yoda of the franchise, dude.
Yeah.
He really was.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay, man. I'm sorry.
Okay. No, I'm just saying. I mean, without him, there would be no rescuing Neo. Because I mean, even to the point where he put his body in jeopardy to save, because Neo was getting choked out by one of the agents. And he jumps to the wall, and takes to take him on, dude. Knowing he was outnumbered, knowing he didn't have the strength to beat him.
Yep.
So
but going back
to
what you were saying, Swain, just about the movie seeming to have, or to start like this trend of, more blacks and people of color being in these type of films, it's interesting to note that in The Matrix that all the gatekeeper characters are people of color. You have Morpheus, who brings Neo into the fold and is kind of helping him along to cope with, well, this is the reality. This is the real world, Right. Now I'm going to take you to this other character, the Oracle, who's really going to peep you on some game. And she's a person of color. And then later on in the sequels,
there were no sequels. Next, keep it moving.
There were sequels. The sequels are awesome. The sequels are awesome.
There's only one Matrix.
The sequels are awesome.
There was
only one Matrix. But it was they had 3 parts.
No, there's only one Matrix. No, they're not, sir.
I disagree. I disagree. And I'll tell you why later.
Way too forgiving, sir.
No, sir. I bought into the franchise.
You bought into something. That's for sure.
Yeah, the franchise was deep, sir.
Oh,
but yeah,
God
man.
Awful.
But no,
it was really good, sir.
But to get it back on track, man, it just seemed like the gatekeeper characters were people of color, and I thought that was especially at the time. You see it a lot now, but it's very novel, and I think it's novel for a couple of reasons. You know what I'm saying? Because in a way, it almost makes sense from an aesthetic standpoint, and plus from just a real world standpoint. People of color are always looking for not just representation, but also seeking to gain equality for themselves. So to get this pathway to this type of freedom, it almost makes sense that these gatekeepers would be people of color, because that's the struggle and challenge that we've been trying to go through for centuries, you know what I'm saying? And so, it just really made a lot of sense. And so now it's like, it's no thing to see more people of color in those type of roles and being like very prominent as the gatekeepers in other properties as well.
Adrian, to that point, Adrian, do you think that Morpheus as a character and Fishburne's portrayal of Morpheus falls within the magical Negro kind of thing? Or because to me, he was so noble,
right? He
was so righteous, he was so driven and ambitious, and Fishburne portrayed him with such dignity. I wouldn't put him in the category of a Bagger Vance.
Oh no!
Or Don Cheadle's character in Family Man, or Morgan Freeman in Driving Miss Daisy. It wouldn't even be close to any of those. Those are the traditional magical Negroes. Those are them.
Sure. You know why? For all the reasons you just said, in those other movies, they're almost just like, what do you call it in like a play or like a work of Shakespeare, where you have a character who is kind of like, is it the chorus? Like they're off to the side almost, even though they're of the cast. But it's almost incidental that they're like, let me help you with this. Let me put this here. Let me put a bug in your ear. That type of thing. But they don't really do anything essential to the action, moving the story along.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Adrian, the best encapsulation of that is from Bohemian Rhapsody with the second act. Galileo, Figaro, Magnifico. They do nothing besides just be in the background. Nobody loves me. He's a poor boy from a poor family. Yeah. So it's like that kind of thing. It's like, they're in the background, but not really doing anything. They're just pushing him on. And then on top of it, like you mentioned, the Magical Negro with Bagger Vance, things like that. They don't really they become like the motivation. They can't do it themselves, but they can tell somebody else how to do it.
Right.
I can do it myself, Mr. White Man. But you know what? I can do it. I can help you do it.
Right. Exactly. And obviously Morpheus was more than capable of himself, but he was about freeing minds. So even if Neo had not, quote unquote, been the one, that was another mind freed. So he was going to go get somebody else, regardless of who they were. You know what I'm saying? And try to free their mind. You know what I'm saying? And the rest of the crew respected him for that. Like, when Tank, Marcus Chong's character was like, man, he freed us, man. You know what I'm saying? He rescued us, Yeah. That's the mark of, like, he's an essential character. He's not just apart from the cast in that way. You know what I mean?
Well, I think what we're basically saying is he had agency.
Mm-hmm.
He had agency. He had his own arc. He had his own motivations. Aside from Neo's, I mean, his job was to find the one, but at the same time, he had agency as a character. So, you know, when you saw him jump through the wall, at that point you all were just talking about to fight the agents, and so that Neo could escape, right?
Right, exactly.
Right. So you see, he's conflicted. You feel he's conflicted. You feel the stakes of that. Oh no, he's going to do this. We know he's not going to get out. We know he's going to end up getting captured. He's going to die. So we feel the conflicted nature of that decision. It's the same thing. It's like Trinity. She had her own agency. Neo had his own agency. Even Joey Pants as Cypher, they gave him his own agency. At first, he was just, you know, the smart alecky guy with the Chicago accent, you know, who's talking about, you know, he's going to pop. He's going to pop. You know, he was just there for that. And then when you see him have the interaction with Trinity, where you realize, oh, this guy is actually a little bit jealous. Mm-hmm. This guy is a little bit feeling, you know, kind of, you know, like he's been paid short shrift. And so then when he goes through that whole thing where he unplugs, you know, all the other characters, you know, from their chairs, and he shoots Tank.
Yeah.
Then he starts talking again. He has his own agency, but really none of the other characters have it. That's it. Like Joey Pants is it. All the other characters kind of are there to perform kind of a service to the story and to the crew, but they don't have an arc. They don't change. And I guess that's the big thing is if somebody changes, that's usually a sign of the arc. But but anyway. Let me ask you guys this: as far as the film is concerned, it was, I think, 4 Academy Awards.
Well, which ones were they all for special effects or visual effects? Or
I don't know. I didn't look them up. If somebody wants to look them up real quick, but it won 4 Academy Awards, and certainly not for the acting, but. Per se, because I don't think anybody was nominated for their performances.
Sure.
But what did you guys think of some of those principal performances? We've already talked about Neo. I mean, talked about Laurence Fishburne as Morpheus. Mm-hmm. What did you guys think of Carrie-Anne's performance as Trinity and the great Hugo Weaving?
Yes.
Fucking slaying as Agent Smith.
Yes, man. He was the MVP. We were talking about MVPs last episode. He was the MVP. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. He humanized, and at the same time he walked that thin line between being a human and being a robot. Like he gave you that strict, you know, thought-provoking diction. He gave you the articulation. He did things which were very robotic and also very, very mannequin-like, but also very controlled and humanistic at the same time. When he sits, I'm sorry, Adrian. When he was sitting with Mr. Anderson for the first time in his cubicle, he's got him, Mr. Anderson. One of these careers has a future, and one of them do not. You know?
Look, I even thought
he opens his file up. Yeah?
Yes, yo.
And his hands are to do the gesticulation. Like, you know, what do you want to do, man? You're busted. I got you. You know.
I thought it was so funny when it was so on the nose, but it was just funny and laughable when he says, "Never send a human to do a machine's job."
Oh, man.
What?
Oh, man. You know,
and, of course, the speech about the virus.
That's what I was going to say. We were talking about I had mentioned Shakespeare before. That whole monologue where he's telling Morpheus, essentially, that's the part of the act where the villain kind of discloses what is his motivation. And I'm going to give it to you in this great Shakespearean oratory. What am I going to do? What am I about? But the way he delivers it is so convincing. It's so evocative. You're just like, dang, this dude is serious.
Yeah.
And it never fails to thrill me. It never fails to make the hairs on my arm stand up when he's delivering that.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah. That's Hugo Weaving, man. He's incredible like that. One of the things to your point, Adrian, is like, you know, what's interesting is about these guys, and you look at the agents. They're a trinity themselves.
That's right. They're in threes. Yeah.
They're Trinity, right?
Oh yeah. I didn't think about that. Yeah, Smith and
here's the thing.
and the two other guys. Okay.
Two other guys, right? But here's the thing, though. If they're all equal, why are they taking orders from Smith? If they're all equal agents, why are they taking orders from Smith? When he says leave the room, they should have been like, no.
Yeah.
We're not leaving the room. We make sure you can't bungle this. Make sure you don't go off the record, because actually the first failure was in the machine was when he disconnected for the first time and took the earpiece out.
Right.
If he hadn't done that, they never would have gotten as far as they got inside the building.
Mm-hmm.
So his emotion, him being so close to the humans, like you said, the sickness, the smell, it's thick.
Yes.
It's stitch. He wipes his head off.
Oh, you know what? I didn't even catch
Yes.
that, D. So he takes his earpiece out because he's like he's gonna do some hand wringing and some mustache twirling in front of Morpheus, and so he doesn't hear that Neo and Trinity have come down in the basement and are working their way up into the. I didn't even catch that. So you're saying that he got so caught up in his quote emotions. He got in his feelings, as Drake would say, and then missed the fact that they were, and that's how they got up there.
Yeah, and then you notice that when the two other agents return and come back, they're like, "What are you doing?" He's like, I was just." He's trying to put his earpiece back in his head.
He pulls his pants up.
He pulls his pants up,
yo. I wasn't doing nothing.
I ain't doing nothing.
That's funny.
Oh,
Wow.
That's crazy.
But yeah, man. But I mean, that whole sequence, man, was just freaking brilliant, man. I mean, even Laurence Fishburne, man, and he did a lot of the heavy lifting was between Hugo Weaving and Laurence Fishburne, man. And Hugo did a lot of the robot push, and of course, the humanity came from the desperation of humanity and looking for, the oncoming of the savior, which was done by, Morpheus's character. That was a whole other thing too, because you could see, okay, this is somebody who's trying to recruit. He's trying to save people. He's trying to get them out of the matrix, let them see the actual way of life that these things are. But then for him to go as far as to, go in this guy's room and tell him, "I believe that you can do this," kind of thing, and he still tells Neo, and like a bit of foreshadowing. He says "So you're gonna tell me that I can stop bullets?" It's like, "No, Neo. When the time comes, you won't have to."
Exactly.
And that's so brilliant, yo. That shit was brilliant.
But speaking of, as far as like Keanu Reeves and his performance in there, I thought what was novel about him was that around this time, in '99, most people knew Keanu basically from, Theodore Logan from the Bill and Ted movies, or Johnny Utah from Point Break,
or he was in Speed. Speed was before that, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And Johnny Mnemonic and stuff.
Yeah.
So
Johnny
they knew
Mnemonic,
him from these kind of roles, and it was kind of like Reeves already has a somewhat wooden delivery, as far as like his performances. So it's almost like in this, he was almost a vessel to be filled in a sense. He almost is very cipherous in a way, in terms of not only just his performance, but his overall look and demeanor. You know what I'm saying? So it seems like as the plot went on, you can almost sense him as the character gain confidence, like kind of break through to like, I'm starting to kind of believe this, but I don't know,
I think that's very key is the fact that he is. You call his performance, his acting style to be kind of wooden.
Yeah.
But the idea that let's just be honest about it. He's perceived as being kind of like this kind of dumb, having like a dumb surfer kind of a tone, and so I think that lends itself to the naivete of the character to be like, maybe I can be more than just this guy who stays up late and does drugs and is a hacker and I don't have a life, and maybe I can be more than this. Really? Okay, how do I do this? Okay, wow, I'm actually doing this. Oh, man. And like you're saying, he's actually finding himself within that. And so by the end of the movie, it's not a 180-degree turn from what he was, but you do see the dial turn a few ticks to the left or to the right, where he's a little more than he was prior to the beginning of the movie. And that to me is, I guess, what you would call the genius of casting something well, where I certainly don't think Will Smith could have pulled it off. Leonardo DiCaprio, maybe, I don't know, but he wouldn't have been my first choice. No. And even Keanu probably wouldn't have been my first choice. But I do think he did end up doing a great job of bringing that character to life. And before we move on too far past the cast and performances, what did you guys think of, Adrian, you talked a little bit about the Nebuchadnezzar and the technology inside of it. What did you guys think of the technology in the world of the Matrix and how it was presented, in the sense of like that, they put that electronic bug in his navel, and then they took that glass thing and they sucked it out of it, and then they dropped it out, and he's like, oh no, just that.
Frightening, sir, frightening, brilliant. It turned. It was the beauty of the Matrix, man, is it's man against machine, it's organic versus non, and they kept playing those areas so very fluently and so very seamlessly and one into the other. We know what a bug is, but they really made it into a bug.
A bug, a literal bug,
because the agents can. They threaten Agent Smith. They threaten Anderson in the room. It's like, okay, so you want to talk? Okay, what if you can't speak? What if you can't even breathe?
Man. And then the way the score rises, when he's having that self-realization of, what? Right? And it was so Hitchcockian. That's the other thing, too. There are lots of parts of the movie that have, Hitchcockian type of angles, and, it's kind of like this man on the run from whatever it is. You know what I'm saying? And it's just, And I thought the technology, too, was very hard cyberpunk. You know what I'm saying? Like how there's steampunk, this was very much hard cyberpunk. You know what I'm saying? And the fact that everything looked like it could actually work, and I just thought that was a great touch. Great touch.
Yeah. That's why I think a lot of ways now this year, or just say next year, there's a brand new video game coming out called Cyberpunk 20.
Oh yeah. Keanu's in it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Keanu's in it. It's Johnny Silverhand, and it was written at the time, a long time ago. Cyberpunk 20, the cyberpunk genre, and as far as we know, started William Gibson, but it became a very, very.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Necromancer. Mm-hmm. But it became a very, very it became much more of a socialized world in the game industry, board gaming in particular. And this guy by the name of Mike Pondsmith, actually, who's an older brother, who's got a very distinct voice. He sounds a lot like James Earl Jones in a lot of ways. Very articulate, very interesting. Was picked out by the makers of Red Dead Redemption and Red Dead and the whole game system, Red Dead Redemption, and he they're taking his world very seriously. Those guys are studied on his world, and they've taken characters and cues from movies like the Wachowskis, from various other things, Johnny Mnemonic, and they put like a modern spin on it, but also a retrograde spin as cyberpunk would entail. So I look forward to seeing more on that game as it transpires and comes out next year. That's a rabbit trail. But to say that Keanu's performance was wooden, I think this was the role of his career to me.
Absolutely.
Like this defined him.
Oh yeah.
This helped him get over that hump of Bill and Ted's Next Adventure.
Well, I think Speed did that to a great extent, but this transformed him into an absolute A-list star.
Yes.
Like this made him a commodity where people were like, he could probably do any movie he wanted to do after he finished these Matrix films. Mm-hmm. He could do any film he wanted. He was probably they just backed the truck up. With money in it to get him to do anything.
Yeah. And out pops John Wick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So there you go. But anyway, that's those rabbit trails. But
I've got two other questions or two other things I wanted to get into with you guys, I guess, before we wrap it up as far as this is concerned.
Okay.
One being, so this movie is 20 years old, 1999. It's 2019. And I wonder what your thoughts are in terms of a film like this with the gunplay and the violence in it that it has, if it could be made today with the sensibilities we have today. And I ask the question because we have had, so many spree killers and public shootings, black trench coats.
Happened just a month after the Matrix premiered. It happened on April 20th. The Matrix premiered on March 31st. So those two boys saw that movie and were already germinating a plan with the trench coats and all. That's fucked up, but go ahead.
So so that's what I mean. The black trench coats and the guns and the automatic weapons. I just don't know if it would play the same way today as it did 20 years ago. Now, granted, Netflix, to my knowledge, they did pretty well with 2 seasons of The Punisher. And, that was rife with violence, gun violence and brutality and people getting their heads beaten, bashed in and certainly lots of bullets flying. Yeah. But I just wonder if a film like this with that kind of imagery could get made today and be accepted in the same way as it was 20 years ago. And Adrian, I didn't even realize that Columbine was within 30 days of the film's release. But what do you guys think?
Well, you have to consider that, at the time The Matrix was made, this was just after, like very shortly after the heyday of those John Woo movies, and you see hints of that with the two-handed gunplay, the bullet ballet, that they have and the office building and everything. So you see echoes of that, and because John Woo was very, very influential. His films were very influential throughout the mid-'80s, even up until like the mid-'90s, which is kind of like the apex of his popularity with a lot of young filmmakers. And you see traces of that, but also, too, the filmmakers, if they were confronted with that back then, they could easily say that, well, Neo and Trinity and the cast, they're actually shooting constructs within this program. So the various soldiers and police officers and security guards that they're shooting, it's almost like, and I hate to put it this way, it's almost like fantasy violence in a way. They're just shooting constructs. Because
No, those people died. Did they not?
Yeah, but
didn't Morpheus say if you die in the Matrix, if the mind dies, then the body dies?
True.
So,
true.
And those were just representations of those people as their bodies are in these pods somewhere, in the cyber killing fields of or whatever of the Matrix. But
I'm also thinking of the agents having the ability at any time to say, well, I want to leap into this body. This body is closer to the person I want to kill. And then on top of the roof, you know what I'm saying? When Trinity says, dodge this, and bam, and the soldier that drops and then automatically morphs and shifts into one of the dead agents. You know what I'm saying? So it's almost like you could kind of explain it that way. I'm not sure in the height of all the killing since then, especially post-Columbine and good Lord, everything else since then, if people would take it the same way, now, you know what I mean? And I think also too, the example that you mentioned of like The Punisher and other violent shows, there are a number of shows now that have some really hardcore violence, in them, but I think people are almost inured to it. Almost like, it's a violent show. Okay, even though it's some horrific shit that goes on every single fucking day out here in this country. Yeah. So I don't know how people reconcile that. It's odd. What about you, D?
Well, here's what I'll say. Two things to your point. First thing is, if I recall correctly, and I'm pretty sure I'm close to being right, the reason that the movies look so much like John Woo's films is because the Grandmaster wire worker Wu Ping was very much part of was part of the training of all the principal actors for doing their stunts.
You're right, yeah.
So that's one. That's one. And two, in regards to the violence issue, I think that would get made in this day. I think that nothing has changed. I think that psychologically, sociologically, we've changed in terms of real violence versus quote unquote faux violence. But I think that our need to tell stories and to express those stories in a true manner in which that scenario sets up is still very much there and very much upon it.
Yeah, I don't know if the data supports that, man, because you have movies now that intentionally, even if they take place prior to 2001, they don't show the World Trade Centers. There's a reference to 9/11 porn, a certain kind of city violence and buildings falling and planes and hijacking on planes, to the point where sometimes even with like say for instance with 9/11, where you'll find movies where in the past, let's say 15 years ago, 17 years ago, if someone was a terrorist, like in True Lies, okay, the terrorists were Middle Eastern guys.
Right, yeah.
Now the terrorists are going to be somebody else. Now the terrorists are going to be Russians, or they're going to be some Asian mob or whatever. But they won't be those. So you do see people steering clear from those kinds of things for feeling like they can't, they won't sell with an audience, or it'll make people uncomfortable, or it'll be, for lack of a better term, traumatic for certain audience members.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that to a certain degree, but I do recall, even after that, 24 was still a success. It was still a hit with all kinds of various types of terrorists. And I also think that, Into the Badlands has got some serious, horrifying, like gut-wrenching violence with swords, like limbs getting cut off.
Well, that's violence with swords. I'm talking about like trench coats, gun violence, going and shooting up a public place, shooting innocent people, bodies just being strewn in a public environment. That's what I'm more so referring to.
Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah.
The loner who comes in with a duffel bag and then just starts, because that's happened in McDonald's. That happened in a movie theater when Dark Knight came out. That happens, in the public space. So.
Well, yeah. If that were going to be like in part of the pitch, that wouldn't sell. You're right. Like as part of getting investors and things like that behind it to say this is how we're going to do. A guy in a trench coats walk into a place, start shooting, that wouldn't sell. You're right about that with today's psychological.
And yet, that's who the Punisher is.
Well, yeah,
he wears a trench coat. He carries guns, and he goes into a public place, and he dispenses justice. His version.
But that's not what he did initially, though. And it was kind of understood that those guys were scumbags. Like they set up such a way in the very beginning of that Daredevil, so we realized those guys were scumbags that deserved to get got.
Right. And I guess that's the other thing for me too with the Matrix is I mean, okay, so you got Joe's security guard sitting there, talking about him and his wife are getting ready to go on a cruise, and all of a sudden the dude just walks in with the Uzi and shoots him. It's like, okay, all right. I guess we're doing that in 1999. So.
Right. Well, it's Mr. Establishment. It was us against them. You're not part of the problem. You're part of the improvement. You're part of the problem.
This is true.
But I mean, I don't know, man. That's a valid point, man. I just think hopefully stories will be stories, and they can kind of swing it differently. Like even now, I look at there's a TV show I watched. I want to. It's based on the Bourne movies, the Bourne TV show.
I know what you're talking about. It's on USA.
Right.
Not Treadfoot.
Treadstone.
That's right. Yeah.
I think Mark Bernardin wrote on that show for a minute.
He did. He did, man. And I think that's it's interesting to see. Again, it's not what you say. It's not what you say. It's how you say it. Like so, if you can introduce it as being okay, these guys are the problem. And we're gonna bring it into a place where situationally it makes sense for this kind of solution to be applied. Then it works.
No, I don't.
Now it's not going to be a Disney Channel, It's not going to be Disney Plus. That's not going to happen,
But you know what, though, D, I don't think you're wrong, because it's what I've been saying since the old days of SiDEBAR, that if somebody has talent and a vision, and they have the right collaborators to fulfill that vision, you can make pretty much anything work, and you can make it work well. It just requires those kind of three components in order for it to happen. So it's even like with the this latest episode of Watchmen, episode 6, with race being mentioned, and with white supremacy making a comeback in our and and for black pain to be something that is not just being talked about now in the black community, but is being talked about in the mainstream, you would think, oh, I need a break from it I need an escape from that in my entertainment. But the sixth episode of Watchmen handled it so deftly and so brilliantly and so masterfully, and with such craftsmanship and with such artistry. It's just like, again, you can take it and you can make it work if you have the talent and the vision to pursue it, and
the desire. And I think not only just talent and vision, it's also talent, but it's also like you really have to put the work ethic in there, man. You got to get in there and you have to find inexhaustible ways or a way that hasn't been approached. A way hasn't been approached before, and do it in a way which is more artfully and more well crafted. Like there's easy ways they could have cheesed their way through. We discussed those. We're not going to discuss this right now because it's a whole other can of worms.
Right.
Which
it's a tangent.
I guess we could tell. We can do a little promissory to our audience right now and say there will be a full-time discussion on all the Watchmen again.
Right.
But at a later date. But man, I'm for lack of a better term, I'm shell shocked by how great that show was. I wasn't expecting that at all.
Yeah.
And but getting back to the Matrix, it's hard to do now. So another interesting thing about the Matrix in terms of watching the numbers again, because the Matrix is numbers. When they go to Neo's room for the first time, on his door is number 101. Right.
It's like binary code.
Which is binary code. But here's the thing: I didn't catch this until the very end. When he goes back, when he tries to escape on the way out, he goes back in the same room that the Trinity was in initially, which is 303.
That's right.
And that's where he died.
Yeah, that's the same hotel, Heart of the City Hotel. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's this whole numeric thing that's going on there. They're trying to drive home and make it seem like there's some some kind of similarity and circumstance. So that was kind of fascinating.
It's all ones and
good
zeros.
way to approach it. All ones and zeros. Until there's three, and then even inside of that, there's the three agents that are there near 303.
Mm-hmm.
You see?
True.
And then to break it down even further, he goes into the lead agent, and destroys that.
That's right.
But there was three there at first.
Mm-hmm.
And the other two break out because I'm not dealing with that. They're like, this is more than we can handle.
Right.
So they in true robot fashion, they sacrificed the uneven number that was causing the problem that made everything come to pass in the first place. Although they would never blame him because they were all equal supposedly as agents.
Mm-hmm.
They knew it was the things that precipitated that day were his fault because he's a lead agent.
Yeah.
So.
You're right.
I thought that was interesting.
You're right.
Hey, I did want to bring up one more point before your final question, Swizz, if I could.
Sure.
I think with The Matrix, the other thing, too, that's very prevalent, even at the time I was watching it, was the fact that the Neo is kind of a superhero. And you see that towards the very end of the movie. When they come in with the trench coats, the aforementioned trench coats, there's a point where he's shooting the two guns, and he's running towards the army dudes. You know what I'm saying? And you can see like the edges of his coat flapping like a cape. You know what I'm saying? And then you also have the end of the movie where he comes out a phone booth, and he flies away like Superman.
Like a dang Andrew Robinson drawing of Starman or something, or fucking Kurt Swan from the Silver Age.
Exactly. And it brought me to a point to think, in a way, The Matrix kind of presages this current trend of superhero movies. Not just the fact of the aesthetics, but also in the fact that you take these group of actors who have to build their body and get ready for these type of roles. You know what I'm saying? Like, of those actors trained in kung fu or martial arts. None of those actors
before then.
Like
right.
you know,
Right.
Laurence, Fishburne and Reeves had some experience with guns, in a couple of their roles, but like hardcore training to the fact that to the effect of, man, I really know what I'm doing. I really know how to kick some ass now and shoot this gun.
I know kung fu.
Exactly.
Show me.
You know what I'm saying? And I think now, in the wake of that, you have so many superhero movies now to where you see these actors, getting in shape for these roles, but also having to undergo like very severe fight training to choreograph these fights.
And this was the first one. You're right. This was maybe not the first one, but certainly the one where everybody said, okay, the bar has been raised.
Yeah.
We got a 30-year-old Keanu Reeves who's having to learn this stuff. We got Laurence Fishburne was probably 40 at the time.
Yeah.
No, he wasn't 40. He was probably in his late 30s.
Okay.
He's probably in his late 30s at the time. So all of them, like you said, they weren't athletes per se.
Yeah.
So
I mean, you got freaking Hugo Weaving, who was like a classically trained British actor.
Right.
Doing these believable fight scenes. Using Ken Po, whatever it was he was using.
Exactly. And the fact that you have to come back every other year until this series of films are done and get yourself back into that shape. But I think, didn't they like lock them in after that first Matrix?
After the first one, when they came back to do the second and the third, I think they did them together, right?
Yeah.
And I think that was like 7 years.
Yeah, total.
I think total it was like 7 years. So it was like the first movie, and then it was like 4 years to do the second two movies, and then all the posts and everything. So yeah, it was a 7-year commitment. I don't think their output was very great back then.
As far as special effects and things like that go, the After Effects to get things done.
Well, no, I mean in terms of like the actors taking on many other roles.
That's right. Like they were locked in. That was all they were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think they were like.
Well, think about it. You're right.
Overseas, I'm sorry. I'm interrupting you. D. Go ahead.
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
No, I think weren't they? You said they were in Sydney. Didn't they shoot some of it in like New Zealand or something? Or
no, they shot it all in Sydney. In fact, they built a Fox Studios facility down there. There's a featurette in which Joel Silver was saying, "Yeah, we just moved into this facility here in Sydney. I mean, and you can physically smell the paint drying. I mean, the paint is still wet when we moved in here."
Is that how he sounded, yo?
Yes, exactly.
That's
the glasses and everything. He was just so fascinated, and it paid off for him, man. He took a chance on that. Like Joel Silver has always been like at the cusp of a lot of action movie franchises. Yeah. And this was the last really big one that paid off for him, man. Royally.
Yeah. Truly. The last thing I wanted to throw out was, since we're talking about cyberpunk and cyber thrillers, et cetera, is I wanted to throw out some that have preceded The Matrix and some that have come after it, and just get some quick general takes, on some of these. So of course we've got Blade Runner and then Blade Runner 2049. Yeah. That would fall in that. Ready Player One technically would be considered cyberpunk.
Yeah.
And that's a newer movie. Repo Man back in 2010.
Oh, with Jude Law and
Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Forrest Whitaker, yeah. We've got AI, the movie that Kubrick died and Spielberg took it over and finished it.
Yeah.
Total Recall with Arnold. That's a great one. Minority Report with Tom Cruise. Videodrome back in 1983.
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
A Scanner Darkly, 2006 with Robert Downey. We've got RoboCop. From 1987, and RoboCop 2, written by Frank Miller. Tron, the original Tron, back in 1982.
There you go, D. Yeah.
Which was a Disney movie, D.
Yeah. And felt like it in so many ways.
The Great Akira.
Tron Legacy less so.
Yeah, definitely. The Great Akira from 1988. Terminator from 1984.
Yes.
I didn't see it, but Alita Battle Angel from this year.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I've seen segments, man. It looks really, really good.
Yeah. Very interesting. The sadly Eon Flux from 2005.
Nothing sad about it. It was
that was a real disappointment.
Yeah.
Because the TV show was excellent.
TV show was fantastic.
Fantastic, sir.
The TV show was absolutely fantastic.
Daring.
Was it Peter?
It was incredible, man.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Peter Chung. And our own Eric Kennedy, sir.
Yeah, you're right. 1992, Free Jack.
Free Jack.
1997's Gattaca, which was excellent.
Oh, that was a good one. Yeah.
I really liked Gattaca. I didn't see Elysium from 2013.
Yeah.
It was good.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was good, man.
The aforementioned Johnny Mnemonic in 1995.
Yes.
Ghost in the Shell, the anime from 95.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what else.
And the Ghost in the Shell movie wasn't horrible. It wasn't great, but it wasn't horrible.
Horrible?
I mean, it was. No, it wasn't. I mean, it was tolerable. That's all I gotta say about that.
The same year Matrix came out, the 13th Floor came out. I didn't see that.
Oh, yeah.
Did you guys see that?
No, I didn't. I just remember it.
Okay. Let's see what else. I mentioned RoboCop. Trying to see. Oh, did either of you guys see Upgrade, which came out last year?
I never heard of that.
No.
Okay, so Upgrade was a Blumhouse movie. It was written and directed by the guy he's a writer. He actually wrote, if I'm not mistaken, he wrote The Book of Eli, and he wrote something. Oh, he wrote, I think he wrote the Saw movies. I think he wrote the first couple of Saw movies, and then he left after they kept saying, make another one, make another one, make another one. But it's essentially about a guy whose his wife is killed in like a robbery kind of a thing, and he's paralyzed. He gets shot and he's paralyzed from the neck down. And this tech guy that he was selling vintage automobiles to says, "Hey, I can fix you." And then he puts some cyber in his body, and so now he can move, and he has karate reflexes and strength and all of this kind of stuff. And what he doesn't realize is what the guy actually put in him is not just this technology to let him walk and be physical again, but it also has its own AI. And eventually the AI ends up taking over his body and takes over his being, so to speak.
That sounds kind of good, actually. Wow.
Yeah, man.
It's not terrible. It's actually pretty entertaining for a $5 million movie. If that's one caveat that I can make.
Okay.
Man, along those lines too, Swizz, I don't know if you guys checked out Oscar Isaac's in Ex Machina.
You know what? I keep not finishing that. Is it good?
It is good, man. It is good. You watch it to the end, it's got like a really, really good payoff. I mean, it's in the middle there's small things in between too. It's like, how real is a thing what you create that you put love into? It's that kind of thing. You know? And it's like, does it surpass once we imbue it with all these emotions? Does it surpass our expectation to become like us, or does it become more like us because we're fallible ourselves? And to that point, one of the biggest things we have to mention as far as cyberpunk goes, and arguably not cyberpunk, more like techno, more like robots becoming human. Got to talk about Battlestar Galactica, sir, and about with the Cylons becoming human.
Yeah. You've been watching that. You were watching that when it first came out, or when they when they rebooted it, 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah, well,
that long?
More like it's been a long time ago, man. Maybe like about a decade ago now.
Okay,
almost.
I didn't realize.
Yeah, incredible.
And of course, Terminator and Terminator 1 and Terminator 2.
Right.
Both.
And I'm sorry, man. A respectable shout out to Reloaded and Revolutions of Matrix series, dude. That it was good to me.
Disrespected shout out.
Yes.
Disrespect.
You know they're making a 4, right? There's a 4 coming out, right?
And we remiss to not mention that. Yeah, they are gonna. They have announced a 4th one with Keanu coming back as Neo. So.
And Carrie-Anne Moss come back as Trinity, which I don't know how that's going to happen.
Which Did someone request that? Did someone ask for that?
Why?
Hey, man. Because we could.
I guess so.
I guess so.
That concludes this episode of Sidebar Forever, hosted by Dwight Clark, Swain Hunt, and Adrian Johnson. You can find us online at sidebarforever.com. Any emails or questions can be directed to us at sidebarforever@gmail.com. And also, subscribe to us on social media. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram. Sidebar Forever is copyright 2019. Dwight Clark, Swain Hunt, and Adrian Johnson.